Lieutenant, you were given specific orders. Hey, I'm just doing my job. You give me that Juris my diction crap, you can cram it up your ass. The orders were for your protection. I think we can handle one little girl.
In 1999, I was sitting in a Hoyt's Broadway, a multiplex, and the movie started, and I was just starting to get into it when this happened. I rarely speak during a movie, but something compelled me to turn to my partner and whisper, "What was that?" I was actually totally bewildered. What was the nature of that image? So fast forward a few years, now I'm doing a PhD in film studies, and again I'm confronted by the sheer strangeness of this moment in movie history. In this segment of Close Up, I want to talk about one of the most influential effects in the history of cinema, bullet time in The Matrix. I'm not going to talk about the technology of its production. Instead, I want to talk about what it looks like on screen and how, as a special effect, it changed our perception of cinema. Have a second look. So, what's the big deal about a special effect in a special effects movie in a Hollywood blockbuster? If we think about the huge majority of films we see, I would say that movies tend to stay true to our common ways of perceiving the world. Around 95% of movies show us the world of a film in a way that is intended to resemble the world we inhabit. When we go to the movies and the lights go down and the first images of the movie appear, we want the movie to look like our world, like our lives. We want to perceive it in the way we perceive the world. And this is the critical point of departure of bullet time in The Matrix. Bullet time breaks the common rules of perception. How can a film freeze frame and then move during the still image? How does that even make sense in terms of perception? So you might think, okay, in one sense movies have always broken from common perception. Let me give you one of my favorite examples, Francois Truffaut's The 400 Blows, released in 1959. Have a look at this glorious sequence. It's still staggering all these years later. It's probably one of the most famous moments in the history of cinema. Truffaut contrasts Antoine's rush to the sea. It's a tracking shot, believe it or not, it actually lasts for about 2 minutes. I played you 20 seconds. It's followed by the famous freeze frame on Antoine and the rush zoom. It's the kind of moment that almost inaugurated by itself the French New Wave. Sure, it's an experimental shot, and cinema has always experimented with visual perception. That's what it does. But for me, Truffaut's image is not as bold as the freeze frame on Trinity. As she holds suspended in mid-air, the entire visual frame rotates on an axis. How is this even possible in a narrative film? How can you stop the story, quite literally freeze narration, hold it frozen as you move the frame, and then start the story again? As if narration is any old thing you can play with. We could ask more troubling questions. Is this actually a shot? Or are we looking at something else entirely? Is it a still image or a moving image? And how do we think through these categories that used to explain cinema just fine for about 100 years? The Matrix became one of the most influential sci-fi films of all time. I ended up doing most of my PhD thesis on it. It was a dystopia. It used the internet as the foundation of its story. It quoted all sorts of pop culture materials from across the world. The Wachowskis professed a left-leaning politics, and that seemed to connect to so many people. But for me, what made the movie stunning, and what still marks it as such an important moment in cinema, was that it caused me to pause in my viewing, to actually wonder, what is this new image I'm looking at? And that, I feel, is a reaction that all filmmakers and all film traditions desire. Thanks for listening.